Yes, League Cup football is back and we could not be more buzzing. This is Full Time Devils. It's time for the Derby preview. Today, a great lineup of guests with me. Gaz today, Howson's here, Paul Rantcast is here, and John Shin is here as well. Guys, let's get stuck straight into it because despite my positive demeanour at the moment, it's maybe not the most positive times in the world for Manchester United. We need to start with one of the biggest negatives from the weekend's draw against Wolves, and that is probably Lukaku. Many people saying that it's the worst they've seen him play in a United shirt. Howson, I think that you said something along those lines. What did you make of him? And is it a massive cause for concern, or is it just a blip?
It's probably just a blip, and I think people have got to look at his record so far this season. I found it quite funny that when he was getting involved in build-up play quite a lot last season, and he was offering quite a lot as an outlet, people was like, his goal-scoring record's not good enough. Well, at the moment, he's on 4 goals in 5 starts in the league, and we're going to be saying his involvement in overall play is not good enough because that's the way people are. But I don't think it was very good at all. I thought it was his worst game in a United shirt against Wolves at weekend. And I think the reason to be concerned is we haven't got a plan B. Marcus Rashford can't play the hold-up role. Anthony Martial can't play the hold-up role unless you're thinking about Fellaini as a hold-up sort of false nine sort of striker, which I'm sure is on a notepad somewhere in Jose's office. I don't know what United's option B is. And the bigger problem around that is I don't even know what our option A is. So I think that the issue is that we don't really know how to get the best out of Lukaku and how to get the best out of this team. And I don't want to just focus on pure Lukaku because ultimately he's at the end of a very long chain of everybody else trying to create chances. And Jesse Lingard wasn't good enough. Alexis Sanchez wasn't good enough. I thought defensively he was all right. Nothing spectacular. I thought the midfield was quite exciting. Even Fellaini. I think Fellaini's at more of fault for the goal that Pogba's getting blamed for. Because he was in the defensive line and doesn't rush out to the ball or anything like that. He just sort of stays in the defensive line and then lets everything bypass him if you watch the goal again. But Lukaku is a big problem for us because we are so geared up to play through Lukaku. And if he misfires, like I said, there's not enough of everybody else chipping in with goals. And if he's misfiring, I don't know what we do after that. We haven't got that plan B.
Yeah, 4 goals in 5 league starts this season for Romelu Lukaku, which is obviously a great record. And I am very much one of those people who's of the opinion that you can't really have a go at a striker's performances as long as he's putting the ball in the back of the net. That is his primary job. However, he has missed quite a few blaring opportunities this season, hasn't he, Paul?
Yeah, and he always has, and he always will, and almost all strikers do. I mean, that's if you look at the kind of conversion rates of big chances of big strikers all around the world, they miss chances. It's part of the game. And the other thing about Lukaku is anyone that thought he was going to come to United and not have extended spells where he didn't score has never watched Romelu Lukaku play. Like, he's always had patches of the season where he dips in and out of form. And to me, the Lukaku is just being Lukaku, basically. And I don't mean that critically at all. I think he has an awful lot to offer as a striker. But Mourinho has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, that's for sure. But the thing that confuses me about it is how Mourinho seems to basically be trying to use Lukaku like Drogba Mark II, when Lukaku is just a massive poacher. You know, Lukaku isn't a hold-up man who plays with his back to goal. That's not what he's best at. Lukaku is a fox in the box who also has immense power. So but he uses that power with his face to goal much better than he does with his back to goal. And I kind of disagree about the fact that there's no replacement for him. I know what you mean, though, actually, because I don't think you're saying we've got no one else who could play number 9 in
absolutely
a certain system.
No one's going to hold it up. No one's going to be the target man.
No one's going to be a Mourinho number 9, but the thing is, I don't think Lukaku's a Mourinho number 9, not really and truly in the mould that you might think. But of course, you know, Mourinho's had periods where he played with different types of strikers and used them really well. It just seems like for him, it's Lukaku or nothing. But to go back to the players' individual performances, if you look at last season, we were having this thing on the Pogba debate that we did the other week, where somebody said, I think it was Mo that said Lukaku was consistent last season, but he wasn't at all. He had a really good patch of form, then his form really dipped, and then he got really better again. And I think it might be that this is a little tiny blip, or it might be a 5 or 6 game blip where he slowly plays his way back into form. But he's still going to score a ton of goals this season because he's never not scored a ton of goals.
John, what do you say to people who say that, and I've seen people on Twitter saying something along these lines, that him scoring goals is hiding his bad performances? To me, that makes no sense. John, talk to me.
I mean, to a certain extent, that's outright ridiculous. I mean, a striker's main job is to, he needs to output goals. And for the people who are upset at the performance, I understand that. I mean, the performance from Lukaku, as Steve rightly mentioned, wasn't great at all. It's probably one of his worst. And the one thing I didn't like was his inability to really at least try to get on the chances. There was one specific event where I think it might have been Jesse Lingard who flicked the ball over the defense, and it was literally laid in front of Lukaku, and it was just the Lukaku and the goalkeeper. And rather than just getting a foot on it on an instant touch, sort of that acrobat style.
He stared it out, John. That's what he did, wasn't it? He stared it out.
Exactly, but what he was trying to do was he was lining up the shot in front of the goalkeeper, and it took about a second and a half, 2 seconds, and it was way too late at that point. And I think that was a huge moment in Lukaku's sort of performance, and he's going to have to really look at that and really realize that, as Paul mentioned, Lukaku being Lukaku is great and all, and we know that he has been to a certain extent a proven striker in the Premier League, but if he's going to play for Manchester United, if he's going to lead our line, he needs to improve. And I'm not just wholeheartedly blaming Lukaku for that performance. Like Steve mentioned, Jesse Lingard was very isolated. Alexis Sanchez was ineffective. And even though Martial came on and whatnot, we just couldn't get the ball to Lukaku. We just couldn't get the attacking approach right. And that entirely is a collective effort. And Lukaku happens to be the guy that needs to bury and finish chances for the most part of it. So if that's not going to happen, they all need to improve. But Lukaku definitely didn't have a good game. He needs to try and bounce back from this. And he needs to understand that, he needs to learn from these errors in this game.
But if you look at the chance creation, like Lukaku is the tip of the spear, right? He's the one that the chances are really in theory supposed to fall to. But the chance creation against Wolves, I don't think United's performance was like apocalyptically dreadful against Wolves, but the chance creation definitely wasn't good enough. Just look at the data. Like, the data will tell you that United created a tiny volume of high quality chances in that game.
And didn't even have one expected goal, did we?
No, exactly, like 0.6, I think. But the Lukaku is part of a system that is terribly malfunctioning because all our attacking players are playing badly, in inverted commas, and they're not all rubbish. Like, you put inverted commas around the word proven in the Premier League and said that Lukaku has to improve to be a Manchester United striker. But do you spend £75 million on a, 24 when he signed, a 24-year-old striker because you think he's got to dramatically go to a new level really quickly to fit into the system? Surely you buy a player at that level at that age for that expense because of what he can do now, not because what you believe he's going to grow into.
Steve, you mentioned something a little bit earlier on about us probably not having any other number 9 in our squad who could currently play in the system that Lukaku's currently being played as in terms of the hold-up play. Do you think that this is a chance going into the game against Derby maybe to switch up the tactics a little bit and give someone else a chance as striker? Paul's laughing because he knows it ain't going to happen.
Well, he's right, because it isn't going to happen. We're going to probably try and play the same way. I think the only way I actually think that all of the rest of the strikers that we've got would probably benefit being played as a pair. I don't think we've got anyone that could be the lone striker in the way that we hope Lukaku is, or Jose hopes that Lukaku is, but in reality he probably isn't. I do sort of understand why he's probably playing Sanchez with him so much, because I think he probably wants him to develop some sort of relationship where it's like the big man, small man typical sort of thing, because Sanchez's chance creation normally is pretty good, although it's been pretty poor this season. And I can kind of see what he's trying to do. It's just not working. And it's not kind of happening in other areas of the pitch, which is why things are falling down. It goes back to last summer when we didn't get someone like Perisic. Like, if you want to get the best out of Romelu Lukaku, put the ball into the box consistently, and you will get a guy that gets you a hatful of goals. Because unless you 2v1 him as defenders, he's going to out-jump you, he's going to out-muscle you, and he's going to get his big head on a ball, and he's going to stick it in the back of the net and get you a goal, because that is what Lukaku does. On the floor or in the air, he wins it. It's as simple as that. But we haven't got anyone that can consistently deliver a ball, whether that's a full-back midfielder or a winger. We haven't got anybody that's putting the balls in the right area that gets Lukaku the opportunities that he likes to thrive off. I see so many times that he does things that are just really untechnical for a centre-forward. Like, when you're teaching kids to receive a pass, you teach them to control it with the back foot. You let it come across your body and you control it with your back foot. You've got this big tip of the spear centre-forward who's controlling it with the foot closest to the ball that's coming to. And defenders just pulling one of his arms. And then that's why it looks like he's got a terrible touch half the time. His technique for bringing a ball in is actually quite rudimentary.
Which is really odd, because of all the criticisms you can level at Lukaku, he's extraordinarily dedicated to learning his craft. Like, he spends hours and hours and hours watching video of opposition defences and trying to pick out different movements. He's a real scholar of the game, and all his managers have always said that about him. So it is strange that he has these what look like technical weaknesses.
Okay, focus off Big Rom for a sec. John, talk to me about the rest of the team going into the game against Derby. Playing in the League Cup, maybe a chance to rest a few, get a few youngsters in there, or do you think it's going to be completely first team once again?
I think normally in an ideal situation, these are the kind of games where you try to rotate heavy members of your squad that might need a little bit more of a rest. You might need to get more game time from some of the younger players. That's sort of the ideal situation. But in this case, we've had a very rough, patchy start to the season, and Jose Mourinho is going to want to rectify every single possible error, every single chance he's going to get. And Derby County is obviously another chance for Jose Mourinho to get things right. And players like Alexis Sanchez, who I think Steve's spot on with respect to getting Sanchez to really sync and synergize with the front three, especially Lukaku. And I think Jose Mourinho's real main goal was to make sure that these players don't oversimplify things. Lots of times when you hear the audio during the game, even when you're watching it on, through the television, you hear Jose Mourinho screaming the word simple, 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 simple. And he's constantly screaming that, which is very, very interesting from a fan's perspective, because you can tell that what he wants to do is try and get these players to just play simple, to try and slowly build that synergy together. But with respect to your question with regard to rotation, I just don't see it happening as much. I'm hoping that we will, and when we get to the prediction, I'm gonna have a rotated squad, but I don't see a heavy rotation, especially with respect to the striking position or in the offensive areas.
Howson, we all know that you know a lot about the young lads at United with a lot of potential and who are potentially going to be great players one day. Any of them going to get in the team against Derby?
I don't think so. With the under-23s fielding a really strong team this weekend against Middlesbrough, like the ones that went on tour, Chong and Gomez and Garner, they all played. Mason Greenwood, weirdly, because he's got the same amount of rest time as the first teamers, might have a real outside chance of going, because he'd have at least done recovery yesterday and would have been available today for any sort of tactical work that they're doing. If Jose wants to play a blinder and he wants to get the fans on board, bang him on a bench and don't even bring him on, because that'll get people talking and deflected about other stuff. But I don't think he's going to do that at all. And when you look at the first team players that need minutes, that haven't been playing too much at the moment, you can probably put a full squad together. That being said, it depends on how much he wants to rest Lukaku, because he looked like he needed a rest after the Wolves game. I think that was one of the things. He did look tired. I mean, he's featured in all the internationals. Obviously, he went deep in the World Cup. Hasn't had a great pre-season or pre-season at all. So if he really wants to rest him, he might draft in somebody. He's like, oh, do you know what? They played yesterday, or they played at weekend. They've only been doing recovery this week. They can sit on the bench and take some instructions. You would hope. It depends how meticulous he is in his preparation for Derby. But we know that he loves to win the League Cup, so it wouldn't shock me to see a very strong United side, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, in the past, I'd maybe be quite excited for this game, thinking there's going to be a few players playing that I've never seen before, but we know it's probably not going to be the case, is it, Paul?
No, I think it'll be a heavily rotated side, but I think it'll be a heavily rotated side full of the first team players that haven't had many minutes this season, or that have been in the punishment beatings chamber. This is this is where Eric Bailly and Juan Mata might be let out. I think it's going to be that kind of rotation, the old Fergie Park Ji-sung rotation, rather than the kind of full-on bring through youngsters. I mean, of course, I would love to be wrong in that regard, but actually, I have to say, I also completely understand in this case. I've got quite a lot of sympathy for Mourinho if his move is to give minutes to the first teams that haven't had enough minutes.
Okay, on the way in a bit, we're going to be talking about Derby County and the threats that they will pose to United in the League Cup third round. And we'll also be going through everyone's starting 11. Who do you think is going to start for the Reds? We'll be back in a sec. Right, back into it. Let's talk predicted 11s then, boys. Let's start with Paul. We've not started with Paul yet. Who are you starting for the game against Derby, mate?
I think it is going to be... I'm really annoyed about doing this preview, by the way, because I think that one of the ways that you win the game over the course of the season is to not do the League Cup.
All Champions League, I reckon. Champions League's probably going to be pretty rough as well.
Chris has written this down on here. He's put, anyone who gets the 11 right here will be given the keys to a brand new second-hand Ford Mondeo. That's how sure Chris is that none of yous are going to get it bang on. So, Paul, go on, tell us your team.
All right, I've gone for Sergio Romero in goal, and excitingly, Diogo Dalot, as it was being pronounced during the Young Boys game.
Diego like everyone else and really pissed off all the commenters.
Yeah, Diogo Dalot, I'm super excited to see him again at right back. I mean, listen, I thought that Matteo Darmian's first month at United was absolutely electric, so I'm maintaining some degree of calm, but my goodness, it was nice to have an outlet on the right wing again. So I'm excited to see him back in the side. I've gone for a centre-back pairing of Eric Bailly and Victor Lindelof. The thinking there is I probably would have gone Bailly and Jones if Jones wasn't still injured, because Smalling is kind of back in the kind of unrotatable, he's the man position, and it's just whoever plays alongside him. So I wonder if he'll rest Smalling for this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Smalling and Bailly instead. And Steve will be delighted to see that I've got Ashley Young at left back just because he needs some minutes. And talking of needing minutes, McTominay, Pereira, both I reckon got a good chance of starting in the centre of midfield, assuming that I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Pogba in this game, but I think it would be good to give Pogba a rest here. And then I went with Matic just because he didn't play at the weekend, although he was suspended for that game, so that's why he didn't play the weekend. Good brains. And then up front, Mata, Lukaku, because of the relative lack of options with Rashford's suspension, and Martial on the left rather than Sanchez, so that Jose can say, I've got to play Sanchez in the league because I played Martial in the League Cup, because he's a terrible man.
I love that. John, what's your team, mate?
I went for Romero in goal. I have a back four of Young, Lindelof, Smalling, Dalot. I initially put Bailly in the mix, but I think Jose Mourinho is going to want to opt for the central defensive partnership that's been successful so far this season, or the least unsuccessful, I guess. I don't know how to phrase this.
Successful.
The least unsuccessful. Let me rephrase that. And then I went for the midfield three of Pereira, McTominay, and Fred. I think Fred's definitely going to be given another chance at this. I thought he had a great game against Wolves. In my front three, I have Martial on the left with Mata on the right, and like everybody else mentioned, we're thin in options in terms of the striking areas, and I think we're probably going to have to stick with Lukaku.
Martial, hat-trick. I'm calling it. Howson, who are you starting?
I think it's really interesting. Everyone's gone with probably like 9 or 10 of the same players for this. Romero in net, Dalot at right back, Young at left back. I've gone with Bailly and Jones. For the reasons as Paul mentioned, really, it's not really many obvious choices. I think it wouldn't be crazy to see him try Darmian at centre-half because he has played there before, but he might only do that if he goes to a back three and he can trust him as being one of the outside ones. But don't be shocked if you see Darmian at centre-half, especially with the sort of threats that Derby have got as well. Midfield, I think it'll be McTominay and Pereira, and then I've really ummed and ahed about the third midfielder. I've flipped from, could it be Fred? Could it be Pogba to bring a bit of creative spark? Could it even be Jesse Lingard played a little bit further back? I think it will be Fred. As he's getting adapted to the English game, I think it'll probably do him a lot of good to play against a team where he's likely to dominate the ball and he's likely to be able to create a lot of chances. A little bit of a confidence booster for him. And then up front, Juan Mata on the right, Tony Marshall down the middle, and Sanchez on the left for similar reasons that Fred's getting another game as well. Let's get him on the score sheet and let's hopefully kickstart his little bit of a season. But again, don't be shocked to see Lukaku for the same reasons go and rack up a load of goals against Derby, because they would not handle Lukaku if he can find some sort of form. I don't think you'll see Lingard. I certainly don't think you'll see Chris Smalling, and I hope you don't see David De Gea as well. And I unfortunately don't think we'll be seeing any youngsters, which is a nightmare because we've got some absolute crackers that are knocking on the door at the moment.
If we actually want to stay in this competition, we do need to be careful a little bit with the rotating. Derby are a very good team, not too far behind Wolves at the minute, I'd say. One of the best teams in the Championship. Right, let's talk about Derby. Let's talk about their 11s. Why are you looking at me like that?
The way you phrased that, it was like Wolves are in the Championship.
Yeah, I know, but they've just come up from the Championship, mate.
I know, but
so
the way you phrased it was like they're not too far behind Wolves in the Championship, and you're like, hold up.
The people are intelligent enough to understand what I meant.
No, they're not, Gaz. Right, if you've ever read the comments on YouTube before. They're not.
Let's talk about Derby then. Tell me what threats they pose, talking beyond the fact that Frank Lampard is their manager, because, Paul, talk to me. Derby.
I can't believe you've asked me to go beyond the fact that Frank Lampard's their manager. I think that's cruel, to be honest. They're currently 6th in the Championship, which might sound crazy, but it's the Championship, so there's like a third of a point separating the top 25. They've lost 3 games, but they're in a decent-ish run of form. They drew with Blackburn at home, which they wouldn't have been pleased with, especially on the back of a loss to Rotherham. But before that, they'd won 3 on the bounce, and winning 3 on the bounce in the Championship is no joke, given one of them was in the League Cup, but still, even winning 3 games on the bounce when you're playing in the Championship is no joke, given the ferocity of the fixtures and just the sheer volume of fixtures that you have to play in that division. It's such a tough division. I mean, I don't think anyone could be disappointed with the start that Lampard's made. I was talking to a Derby fan the other day, actually, and they said it's not perfect yet by any means, but you can see what he's trying to do, and it's just really nice to have a manager who's trying to play attacking football. Can't imagine nothing. I'm not just gonna make an unnecessary dig for no reason. They've got an ex-Red. Yeah, exactly. They've got an ex-Red in the ranks, but Tom Lawrence won't be playing because he's suspended for this. But Tom Huddleston in the centre of midfield has not played a ton for them yet, but it's clearly like a bit of Premier League quality there, and a very exciting up-and-coming player in Mason Mount, who has been, who's been on the score sheet a decent amount already this season. So they've. The reason that I picked a heavily rotated squad isn't about Derby, really. It's about where United are at. I think if Mourinho really wants to prioritise it and really wants to be sure that we get past this, he's going to have to put a really full-strength team out. I think it's a bit of a leap to say they're not that far behind Wolves, because if you just look at the quality of players in the squad, I'd say there's a fair old gap. But listen, at no point would it be surprising if we slip up. We play a heavily rotated side, look a bit shaky, and slip up in this fixture.
Paul, I'm going to be totally honest. I don't watch too much Championship football. I'm basing all my knowledge on Derby on what Stoke fans have told me, because I do a lot of work in Stoke at the minute. And they tell me that Derby and Leeds are the 2 teams that they're watching out for this season and have potential to finish above them. So, Howson, do you know any players in particular in Derby's team, rather than just the hearsay of Stoke fans, that are going to cause us problems?
Paul nailed it. Mason Mount's unbelievably good. On loan from Chelsea, I think he's 19, and he looks like a real banger. Plays on the left-hand side of their midfield free. Really exciting. Got a bit of a finish on him. Likes a free kick. Can spot a pass. This is a team that's going to come and combat and going to come and have a go. And I think if you allow them to do that, that you could easily slip up. Like Paul, everyone knows that anyone that's coming at you from the Championship is going to be a nightmare. So we've got to watch out for that.
John, what do we know?
Well, one of the sort of angles that I was going to approach was the actual game time. If you look at Derby's previous records, they played Rotherham on the 15th. They played
pronounce Rotherham again, John. Pronounce Rotherham.
Rotherham on the 15th.
I like
Blackburn
Rotherham.
on the 18th, and then Brentford on the 22nd, and then they have Manchester United us on the 25th. So that's a really tight schedule. That's about an average of like 3 to 3.5 games per week. So that's kind of tough. And I think we really need to try and shy away from the Frank Lampard versus Jose Mourinho master versus apprentice type relationship. But I think that's going to be a big factor, considering the fact that the amount of scrutiny that Jose Mourinho will receive if he were to take a defeat against Frank Lampard. One of the main sort of headliners that people always try to push for is Jose Mourinho expired? Is he sort of past his prime? And if somebody as new and refreshing as somebody that was under him, like Frank Lampard, comes to sort of dethrone him in that sense, I guess we want to make sure that Jose Mourinho does not let that happen at all. I'm sick of hearing anti-Jose Mourinho stuff on social media, and he needs to really take a good victory here against a side that might be potentially threatening.
John, I've not even thought about it like that, but that's what it's going to be spun as, isn't it? It's like the apprentice has become the master and all that the day later. Oh, I don't want it. By the way, John, I wasn't telling you to change your pronunciation of Rotherham. I actually prefer Rotherham. It's a much nicer pronunciation, to be honest. Right, score predictions. Howson, let's start with you. What do you reckon?
3-1.
3-1. Paul?
Yeah, this is throwing darts at a dartboard, really, because some people could do that and probably like deliberately hit the numbers, but I can't. This is me trying to throw darts at a dartboard. I'm not good at darts. You see, that's the whole. Anyway, I don't know. I hope we win, so I'll go 2-1 United.
John?
I'm going 3-0.
I was going to go 3-0. I'll go 4-1 then. Sod it. Throw everything at it. Throwing darts at a dartboard or something or other. Right, guys, thank you very much for joining me today on the preview. Howson, go and subscribe to him on YouTube. Paul has the Rantcast. It's one of the best United podcasts going. Go and check that out. And John Shin, we need you to subscribe to him on YouTube. Not just because he's amazing, but because we've made the discovery that there is another John Shin on YouTube who's bigger than our John Shin. That's outrageous. That can't be happening. No one's bigger than thick legs. So go and subscribe to John Shin. We need to make him bigger than the imposter. My name's Guys Drinkwater. We'll catch you next time on Full Time Devils. See you soon, guys. Laters.